Hi everyone! So finally, I'm doing looks with the Surge palette. At the time that I was filming this, my cold sore was healed, but instead I was dealing with a very runny nose, so I couldn't wear face makeup, so I thought that's alright. I have so many looks I want to do with this. It really is at this point just really difficult for me to try and film a bunch of full face looks and get this out on time, so I ended up doing it on my eyes again, but in exchange, you guys get 6 looks instead of 3, so that's double. So for this first look, I really wanted to try and do a more graphic look. Actually, a lot of them ended up being graphic just because this palette is just so fun. But I wanted to try a more graphic look using one of the neon shades as an accent. So you can see here, I'm just building up the base using the pastel purple and then the darker purple. And then here is where I started running into some problems with this palette. Now, I found every single neon pigment in this palette to be tricky. Not impossible to work with, but tricky. So you can see here I'm attempting to build the shade up and I really can't seem to build it up to max opacity. Like I can't get it to look like it looks in pan. I even ended up using some Inglot Duraline to try and help, and I think that helped a little bit. You can see here I'm getting a little more pigmentation out of it, but I think these neon bases are going to really be extremely eye base dependent. They are absolutely not going to work if you have dry eyelids that are not fully hydrated and nice and just moist and ready to get the eyeshadow to stick on smoothly. If your eyelids are very dry, if the eye primer is set or dry, or if you're using an eye primer that isn't prone to being as sticky, I think these neon pigments are going to have real problems. So in these first 2 looks, I had just obtained and was trying out the Rare Beauty eyeshadow primer, which I thought felt amazing on my eyelids. It wasn't drying at all, but I did notice that it kind of self-sets itself. And so you can see here, even with the white eyeshadow, it's kind of just having some issues applying. Now, the end look still turned out great. You can see here just some mascara. The pink still shows up and it adds a really nice flash. After I filmed these looks, I did go back and kind of play around with the neons a little bit more, and I will have a photo at the end of the video where I'm going to do a quick discussion of what's in that photo. I think that will help you guys understand more what I'm talking about with these neon pigments. Now for the second look, I wanted to work with the burgundies and the brick tones. I do end up revisiting the orange later, but I did want to do something a little bit more bricky ready for this, and I had a ton of fun. The mattes, aside from the neons, are all just kind of classic Blend Bunny to me at this point. Blend so easily, pack on really well if you're using a tackier eye base. And yeah, I like them. So here I'm using the neon green, and I just felt like past a certain point, like after like maybe 2 layers or so, any eyeshadow I applied would just drop back off and fall onto my face. And it would kind of look dry, and if I over blended it, I'd get patches. So you can kind of just see the powdery nature of these neons where I'm having difficulty working with them. Again, I feel like this is very going to be dependent on your skin type, because I have seen other creators use the neons with very little consequence, and when I was looking more into their skin type, I noticed they all have oily skin or oily eyelids or both. So I feel like these might just have more issues with dry skin than actually being poor quality shadows. The shimmers in this palette absolutely are not disappointing to me in the slightest. I think they all definitely, except for the lightest champagne one on the left, they all definitely apply much better with a finger than with a brush. This shade here is like beautiful. It has a translucency to it that reminds me of a Korean eyeshadow, and it actually is one of my favorite shades in the entire palette, which I know is so boring of me. But here's the first 2 looks. I hope you guys think these are fun. I added some liner to the second one just to kind of add some interest, because that look is overall pretty simple. And here you can see the first 2 looks. Just, you know, something fun, something, you know, just fun looks. Alright, these next 2, I used the Urban Decay Anti-Aging Eyeshadow Primer because I wanted to do a look featuring the neon orange, and I wanted to see how it would work over the anti-aging primer, which reminds me of like a less tacky version of the Fenty primer, which I no longer have. I did get rid of it, and I kind of wish I hadn't, just because that would have been a really fun experiment to see how Blend Bunny shadows perform on varying levels of tackiness, and Fenty is like super sticky. But anyways, the anti-aging for me personally I find has a tackier base, so I'm just experimenting to see, and the neon to me this time, you can see it laid down really well. Now it could also have something to do with the fact that it's a neon orange, but generally speaking, my experience with the neons in this palette, I can see why people were really disappointed with the Huda neons and the color ColourPop neons. I think neons are just really difficult to formulate. I think there's just something about them. Additionally, I did notice some creators who use the neons, they put on like a super white kind of base eye primer, like the Glamlight one for instance, that really just created an extremely white base, whereas I'm using either skin toned or non-tinted eye primers, so the neon's having to fight with my complexion to show up, so that's another issue too. But really I think the neons, I think Blend Bunny shadows in general, if you have dry eyelids that you don't properly prepare beforehand, you're gonna get some problems. However, I'm not saying that to rag on Blend Bunny, because I have noticed that practically every single eyeshadow in my collection absolutely sucks if I don't prepare my eyelids properly, because it is just the nature of dry skin to not want to accept product. Like dry skin for foundation, dry skin for blush, dry skin for anything really, you're gonna have issues. So this is hardly a unique issue to Blend Bunny, I just find it is particularly pronounced, and so it just for me personally reinforces the importance of me doing my due diligence preparing my eyelids beforehand, you know, since it's not good for me to dry out my eyelids anyways. So this next look I really wanted to use the greens. These greens are a lot more saturated and intense than the olive and khaki tones in the Dollhouse palette, so no overlap there. Absolutely love greens, so I was super excited to dig into these. And you'll see here I'm kind of doing like more of a halo eye shape, so I'm putting the eyeshadow only on the inner and outer corners, just really taking the time to build them up. They build up really well. I really had no issues. I feel like these green mattes are just some of the best green mattes I've ever used, period, which is just so awesome. I'm still waiting for Pat McGrath and Natasha Denona to make a green palette. It hasn't happened yet, and I'm still sitting over here waiting for it, but in the meantime, Blend Bunny has totally got you covered. These are gorgeous. I think between Surge and Dollhouse, you know, you could just create a bunch of fun green looks that way. But you can see there that I built the shade up really nicely, looks great. This shimmer right here is beautiful. Of course I'm using a finger as always. It's just such a pretty shade of forest green. I love it so much, and I just definitely one of my favorite looks I did of the 6. So simple, but the shimmer really just brings it all up to a whole new level. Now I did kind of want to brighten the very inner corner using the white matte, and it actually kind of made me want to add a graphic element, so sadly I did like 90% of it off camera because I'm a fool. But what I did was I took Duraline and I took the white shadow and I turned it into a liner. So I just used my Inkblot Duraline, and you can see here I just added just a very simple white graphic liner element to the look. I think it just added a little bit of interest, and there you go. I'm wearing lashes on both of these. And that's these set of 2 looks complete. I don't have any other face makeup on aside from Becca Under Eye Brightener and eyebrow. So you can really see the eye makeup without the rest of my face distracting you. Alright, these last 2 looks. So this look here is going to be using mostly the orange, and I know I had already used the orange, but the day I did this it was actually Chinese New Year. Or Lunar New Year, and I hadn't really done anything, and I was really tired that day, but I felt really bad not doing anything because I really had wanted to. So I decided to put this together very quickly for my Instagram, and so here it is. It's going to be a graphic look inspired by tiger stripes. So I'm first using it to just build the, I'm just first building the base. So I'm using the orange shadow, and then I'm using the white shadow for some, to kind of just brighten up the upper portion of my eyelid, and to really make the orange stand out, I want it to be nice and saturated. So you can see here, very nice orange, and then I'm just adding some depth and structure using one of, I forgot to show, but you'll see in a couple seconds, I was mixing 2 shades together. I mixed the black shade with the dark brown that was right adjacent to it. You'll see in a second. Here it is. That's the 2 shades I used. There you go. And I'm just using that to add some structure. And then I'm using the gold on my lower lash line just to kind of, you know, I can't not have a shimmer on my lower lash line, so that's just there. And now I'm going to start working on the stripes. So I'm using a very tiny brush, and I first use the black and brown eyeshadow mix that I used prior, and I'm using that to kind of plan where I want the stripy stripes to go. I'm just kind of putting them in places. I just mostly wanted it in the outer corner, so I carefully deepen them up until I like them. I didn't want them to look too like regular or structured. I kind of wanted them to have a painterly feel to them. Then I'm going to go over the center of all of them using my Urban Decay Perversion brush tip liner. As you can see, it's really great for this kind of precision work. And then lastly, I took that shadow and I'm just kind of making sure everything is nice and tapered and blended out in the way I like it with an extremely tiny flat eyeshadow brush. And lastly, I'm just putting some more orange between the stripes with a pencil brush and putting some orange on the lower lash line to tie everything together. My dark brown shadow liner was kind of messy, so I did go back and touch that up, and I just wanted to make sure that I had a nice good layer of eyeshadow. And then I also thought in the end that I could use adding a brown stripe just to kind of, so it's not too like, kind of like there's like a faded stripe kind of look. I don't know what I was going for, but I thought it just kind of helped fill in that empty space there. And then lastly, some wing liner so that there's kind of some cohesion with my stripes. And that's it. I added some false lashes. And that's going to be this tiger inspired look for Lunar New Year, the year of the tiger. Really enjoyed this. And I did post it to my Instagram already. Had a lot of fun making this. And so final look, I really wanted to dig back into those purples and do like a full-on purple smoky eye. I've definitely done a purple smoky eye many times now, especially with Glamlight's wine palette. But I wanted to do this and just show off Blend Bunny's matte formula. These are the easiest purples I've ever had to work with. Like I've really never had purples as easy as this. Now I still had to make sure I blended and built up and everything because purples are, from what I hear, a pretty tricky shadow to formulate, but you can see here I'm using the pastel purple to blend it out and it just looks seamless. I really didn't have to put that much effort in. Going in with the darker shadow using my vertical gradient method, and everything is just so easy. I just didn't feel like I had to put much effort into working with these mattes. These really are just spectacular mattes, totally worth the hype. And yeah, I just really have enjoyed Blend Bunny so far as a brand. And you just see, just look how easy everything is for me. And I'm not an eyeshadow expert, you know. I really don't consider myself like the really like super above average at blending. This shimmer here reminds me of that shimmer in the Morphe Pony palette that I was raving about how unique it was. This actually feels really similar to that. It's just more purple instead of blue, but you can still see the blue lavender shifts inside of it. Really pretty shade. And then lastly, I'm using my favorite champagne shade as the inner corner highlight and to highlight my Aiguiselle, and you can just see it's just such a pretty champagne shade. It really is just a star shade in this palette, which is so funny because it's like so boring, but it's so good. So yeah, that's gonna be all 6 looks wrapped up. You can see here what it looks like. Super pretty. The Blend Bunny has honestly made me a lot more enthusiastic about purple eyeshadows than I used to be. Like I used to be really intimidated, but now I actually super love working with purple. Definitely spoiled by her formula. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and now I'm gonna show you my experience with the neons. Okay, so here's the deal. You can see here in the middle, what I did was I took P. Louise eye base and I put it on top of my eyeshadow, and then I stamped using a firm brush. On top of the P. Louise eye base, I put on a very thick layer of the neon green, and you can see how smoothly it applied. But then on the other, so on the left and right sides of my eye, I took the neon yellow and I just applied it on top of the eyeshadow, which was on top of the Rare Beauty primer, and you can really see what I'm talking about with the failure to adhere. So I hope that photo kind of really clears things up for you, shows you guys what I would probably recommend as the best working method for those neons. That's definitely up to you if you think the neons really ruin it, because the neons are a whole row of the palette, but everything else was great. So I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you guys in the next video.